Hello everyone, I'm Kris. Welcome back. This was a request and I apologize. Okay, first off, people have been saying their comments are getting deleted, and I've made a comment before. I'm not deleting anything. I also understand what people are going through. I will click on a video that could say 13 comments, and I will scroll through on my phone where it gives me new comments, and I'll see 13 comments on a video, and I'll click on that video and there's nothing. And on my phone it doesn't show any comments from that video, but when I just look at the thumbnail on my YouTube thing, it shows all the comments. So there's sometimes I can't even read comments. So I hope the discussions are good, because even I can't see them. So I'm not doing anything. I promise I'm not deleting comments. People have said some pretty crap things to me. I've never deleted them. I've said some things back, but that's beside the point. So this was a request. I apologize. I've missed it, I'm sure. But this is, I've never heard of this guy. I don't know. Everybody keeps talking about him. Don't know who he is to anyone else in the world. But I'm going to say, I mean, what could he have really done? Went undefeated in battles? Psst, whatever. Let's get into it. Oh, this is going to be 3 14-minute videos or so. Don't mind me. It's Friday, 7:15. I've worked 50 hours, and I got to get some videos done tonight because my Lions play tomorrow, preseason, so I want to watch them. It'll be Saturday, and this video will be out, so it'll have already happened, but who cares? I'm going to be throwing on some lotion too, so ignore that. I'll get a fan on here.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa...
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get some closed caption here. Please be English.
The person that has been assigned to me today is a person...
You fooled me. Okay, so we're going to act like that whole him fooling me didn't really happen. Video.
That every single young Muslim grows up hearing about. And that is none other than Khalid ibn al-Walid. Khalid ibn al-Walid, the greatest general that the Ummah has ever seen, the greatest military genius after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that the world has ever witnessed. And I only have around 20 minutes or so to discuss the life and times of this great and legendary man. And so I'll try to summarize what I think are some of the most important facts that we need to be aware of about Khalid ibn al-Walid. A lot of us don't realize that Khalid ibn al-Walid did not begin his life as a military warrior. In fact, his life was more akin to growing up as a prince. Why? Because his father was the chieftain of one of the tribes of the Quraysh. Now, a lot of you are really confused about Quraysh and Banu Hashim and whatnot. This is something you need to understand. Quraysh is one large tribe. It's composed of lots of sub-tribes. Quraysh is one of the largest tribes at the time, and it's composed of many sub-tribes. The most famous sub-tribe is that of the Banu Hashim. And that's where the Prophet ﷺ and his ancestry comes from, the Banu Hashim. But there were other sub-tribes as well. Of them is the sub-tribe of Banu Abd-Dar, from which the Umayyad dynasty came. And of them is the sub-tribe of the Banu Makhzum, from which Khalid ibn al-Walid came. So there's 3 main sub-tribes, there's lots of others, there's 3 main ones. The Banu Hashim, the Banu Abd-Dar, and the Banu Makhzum. And each of these had their leaders. So the leader of the Banu Hashim was Abu Talib. When Abu Talib died, it was Abu Lahab. The leader of the Banu Abd Shams was Abu Sufyan. Abu Sufyan, whose ancestry and whose children became the Umayyad dynasty. This is Abu Sufyan. And then the leader of the Banu Makhzum was the father of Khalid ibn al-Walid, and his name was Al-Waleed ibn al-Mughira. So Al-Waleed ibn al-Mughira, the father...
Al-Waleed? Was that the pronunciation? Walid? A lot of people make comments that, hey, Khalid ibn Walid. Anyways, I still don't even know if I'm saying his name right, and I love the guy. So, people always say that you forgot or you missed his dad. It'll be a various battle or whatever. And they're like, yeah, his dad was mentioned. I never know the father's name, and in fact, I just forgot it. We're going to say I was right, though.
Father of Khalid is the chief of the tribe,
Khalid.
which means he's the wealthiest, the most prestigious, the most influential. So he's one of the leaders of the city of Mecca. And in fact, Waleed ibn al-Mughira, Allah revealed many verses in the Quran about Waleed ibn al-Mughira. Allah revealed a number of verses specifically for the father of Khalid ibn al-Walid. And before I even get there, again, this is first information sake that you should know. When you look at the opponents of the Prophet ﷺ, generally speaking, they can be divided into two camps. The enemies of the Rasul ﷺ can be divided into two camps. The first group are those who, even though they were his enemies, they were in some sense still noble. And they didn't stoop to, let's say, cheap tactics. They didn't resort to mockery or sarcasm. Yes, they disagreed, but they retained nobility within them. And the best example in this category is Abu Sufyan. Abu Sufyan was a noble opponent. He was an enemy. He hated the Prophet in the beginning, eventually accepted Islam, but he never stooped to cheap tactics. He never smeared the Prophet. He never slandered. He didn't go to that level. He wasn't of those who would mock when the Prophet would pass by. He wouldn't raise his eyes. He wouldn't make sarcastic comments. There's an element of dignity and nobility.
Absolutely.
The second group of enemies were those who did resort to such tactics. And foremost amongst them is Umayyah ibn Khalaf and Ubay. Abdullah ibn, and Umayyah ibn Khalaf and Ubay and his brother Al-Walid, not this Walid, another Walid. These 4 or 5, including Abu Jahl, of course, is the most famous example. These group of people, not only did they oppose the Prophet ﷺ, they resorted to tactics that are simply demeaning. For example, this group was the one who said, let us throw a dead animal onto the Prophet when he's in prayer. Go to the trash, go to the garbage, pick up a dead animal, throw it on the Prophet when he's praying. This group, whenever he would pass by, they would make some sarcastic remarks. They would joke about him. They would spread slanders and evil about him. If you notice, if you categorize the groups into these two, it is amazing, and it's a point of benefit to learn that none of the people of the first category were eventually guided to Islam. Those who opposed him at a demeaning level, those who would mock and be sarcastic, those who would taunt him, none of them were guided to Islam. All of them met their fate, mostly in the Battle of Badr and some before and after. The Battle of Badr, when every one of these stalwarts, every one of these opponents met their death. Of course, the most famous is Abu Jahl, as you know. The second category of people, by and large, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to Islam. And this shows that those who had manners, akhlaq, even though they were opponents, they had an element of sincerity. They had an element of nobility in them. So even as an opponent, they didn't resort to cheap tactics. And that shows that they had some good in them. And because they had some good in them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala eventually guided most of them to Islam. And
I just want to say, sorry, the air kicked on. I just want to say, when just again, please just go with me. I back when I worked at a movie theater, somebody had a CD of it might have been like, I don't remember. I want to say it could have been Justin Timberlake. I don't even remember now. But there was a couple of us sitting around, and one person had that CD, and they were like, yeah, there's a couple good songs on it, whatever. And I said, dude, it's garbage. It's trash. Why would you? What's wrong with you? And the person that was sitting next to me, his name's Kurt, he goes, I would love to be trash like that. Because he was into music. He goes, I'd love to be trash. Like that? I'd love it. And I like looked over and I was like, oh, the success factor? Okay, I get it. And he goes, yeah. How can you say it's trash when millions of people buy his albums? It was like, he goes, you think he's trash. Millions of people think you're wrong. And it's like, all right, you got me there. I guess it would be me hating on the success that would make him trash, but that's nothing to do with him. That's me. And I would relate that I'm sorry, issues with my solar company still. But if I take that, when he was talking about some people will mock and then some wouldn't, and I think the people who wouldn't mock, they're noble and stuff like nobility, but they're also looking at it like we could insult that guy, call him a liar, false prophet, whatever. But look at all these other people that do believe him. And if they believe him and they are finding some kind of comfort in what he's saying, then who are we to say that they're wrong? And so I think, you can kind of take that in a similar situation where it's, I would have been the one that mocked him. But when you lay it out simply like into that aspect, all right, there's and I apologize again, there was a meme and it showed Vin Diesel on a yacht in France, no shirt on. You can tell he hadn't worked out in a little bit. He's like pushing his gut out and he's got his hand on his stomach. I mean, his life has been treating him pretty good. And he's got his hand on his stomach and he's scrolling through a phone, and somebody said, what a loser. And it's like, oh, what? I would love to be that loser. Are you kidding me? Financially? Never have to worry about anything? Yeah. He's also on a boat on the south of France, and you're what? You're in your apartment in Kansas City? Like, come on. Let's evaluate who's a loser in this scheme. So that's my 2 cents for this. That I understand what he's like. It means a little bit. It really means something to me when I'm hearing him say that, because I remember being on that crowd that would have insulted.
And of course, the primary example here is Abu Sufyan and his son Muawiyah, and Jubayr ibn Mut'im and Suhail ibn Amr. These are the people, yes, they were enemies in the beginning, but because they had a little bit of nobility, eventually Allah guided them to Islam. Now, why do I begin my talk with these two categories? I want to point out that, of course, this is a spectrum. It's not, you can't categorize somebody easily into one of two. And there's a spectrum here, and a few people fell kind of in the middle of this spectrum. And of those who fell in the middle of this spectrum was the father of Khalid, Al-Waleed ibn al-Mughira. Al-Waleed ibn al-Mughira, Al-Waleed ibn al-Mughira never went to that level that Abu Jahl did. He never stooped to that level. Nonetheless, he had in him pride. He didn't resort to sarcasm. No, that was too cheap. But he had in him kibr, arrogance. Pride of what? Of his ancestry. We are from the tribe of Banu Makhzum. We are the leaders of the Quraysh. There was rivalry between the Hashemites, between the Umayyads, between the Banu Makhzum. So each one is rivaling for the greatest, the biggest Qurashi, if you like, the greatest Qurashi tribe. So he's the leader of one of the sub-tribes, and he had in him that prestige, that I am the leader of Banu Makhzum. How can I follow a Hashemite prophet? How can the prophecy have come to another sub-tribe? It wasn't that he resorted to slander, it was that his arrogance got the better of him. And he was one of those who said, why was the Quran revealed to somebody from the Banu Hashim? Why wasn't it revealed to one of the two great men? He considered himself the greatest man in Mecca.
I was just about to say, he's going to say, why wasn't it revealed to me? I am like the leader. I think it goes to show you that I think your character probably plays more of a role in that. By the way, Muhammad was a sheep herder or just a herder, cattle herder? Am I right on that? I'm talking about before. And I know that he was also brought in to kind of be a mediary. Mediary? Is that the right word? He would mediate things. Did I even say that right? He would help negotiate things. It's been a long day. I'm sorry.
Khalid's father, he considers himself the greatest man in Mecca. And he said the second best tribe is the tribe of Thaqif in Ta'if. So he said, why didn't Allah choose me or the leader of Ta'if? And Allah revealed in the Quran, وَقَالُوا لَوْلَا نُزِّلَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنُ عَلَىٰ رَجُلٍ مِّنَ الْقَرْيَةِ. Why didn't Allah reveal this Quran to one of the two great men of these two cities? Meaning Ta'if and Mecca. He's the first great man. If anybody thinks he's a great man, he's got an ego problem. Right? And Khalid's father had this. He goes, I'm a great man.
Was that a shot at me? Watch your back.
Why would Allah choose this youngster? Of course, Khalid's father is probably around 30 years older than the Prophet ﷺ. And so he's thinking, why would Allah choose this man from the Hashemite when I am here? So Allah revealed in the Quran, they said, they meaning Khalid's father, they said, why wasn't the Quran given to one of the two great men? Another incident that shows the nature of Waleed ibn al-Mughira, Khalid's father, another incident that shows his nature is that he was one of those who, when the Prophet ﷺ began preaching, he wanted to negotiate with him a peace treaty. And he went to him multiple times. He goes, look, you're dividing our community up. You're saying things that are blasphemous. Let's try to reach a compromise. So one of the compromises he said was, let's alternate religions. One day I'll follow your religion. One day you follow our religion, right? Let's reach a compromise. Now, you detect a sense of, no matter how foolish it sounds, nobility, because he doesn't want bloodshed. He goes, let's compromise. One day we'll all worship Allah, and then tomorrow you worship our idols. Allah revealed which surah? All of you know this surah. Allah revealed which surah? قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ. Because of Waleed's compromise, Allah is saying, there is no compromise for Tawheed. I can't be a Muslim for a day and a Christian or an idol worship for the next day. There's no compromise. لَكُمْ دِينُكُمْ وَلِيَ دِينٍ. Another, and again I'm just showing you this to understand the household that Khalid is being raised up in. This is his father, one of the chieftains of Quraysh. Yet another compromise, or this isn't a compromise, this is an agreement. Khalid's father, Waleed ibn al-Mughira, convened a council of all of the leaders of Quraysh who had rejected the Prophet. And he said, look, we need to take a firm stance here. We don't agree with his message. We need to have a unified voice. What are we going to say? What should we say about this person? One person said, let us say that Muhammad ﷺ has gone mad. He's gone crazy. Waleed ibn al-Mughira said, we all know the symptoms of a madman. He's clearly not a madman. Somebody else said, let's say that he's a fortune teller. He's a kahin. He's a sorcerer. Waleed said, we all know what fortune tellers are like. He's not a fortune teller. Somebody else said, let's say he's a magician. He's a sahir. So Waleed said, we all know what magicians are like. He's not a magician. Somebody said, let's say he's a liar. Waleed said, we've known him for 40 years. He's never told a lie. Notice there's an element of truth in all that Waleed is saying. He's not stooping to that level. Then his people said to Waleed, look, you are our leader. You're in charge. You tell us what we should do. So he said, let me think a few days. Let me think a few days. Give me some time. He went into his house and he paced back and forth in a frown, scowling. Nobody witnessed this other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah told us in the Quran his privacy in his house, what he was doing. He's walking back and forth in deep thought. And then he said to his people, look, the only thing I can think of is to say that this is some type of magic. Some type of magic. I know it's not the best, but we have no other alternative. Allah revealed in the Quran an entire surah talking about this incident. Which surah is that? Surah Al-Muddathir, very good. Surah Al-Muddathir, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ذَرْنِي وَمَنْ خَلَقْتُ وَحِيدًا وَجَعَلْتُ لَهُ مَالًا مَمْدُودًا وَبَنِينَ شُهُودًا. Leave me alone from him whom I created all by himself. I created him alone. Leave me alone with him. And I gave him money and I gave him sons. This is a reference to Khalid ibn Walid and his brothers. In Surah Al-Muddathir, Allah is referencing Khalid ibn Walid. I gave him sons. One of his sons is Khalid. So you can say that Allah mentions Khalid indirectly in the Quran. Khalid ibn Walid. So Allah says in the Quran about him, عَبَسَ وَبَصَرَ ثُمَّ أَدْبَرَ وَاسْتَكْبَرَ. He kept on walking around, he had a scowl on his face, and then he said, إِنْ هَذَا إِلَّا سِحْرٌ يُؤْثَرُ. The Quran is some type of magic that has an effect. And again, we could go on and on, but one interesting point again about Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira. Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira was that person whom the Prophet ﷺ was deeply engaged in conversation with, hoping that he'd become a Muslim. He could see in him some good. So the Prophet ﷺ was really close, in his opinion, because only Allah knew ilm al-ghayb. In his opinion, the Prophet ﷺ was so close to convincing Al-Walid to accept Islam when sticks were heard in the background, tap, 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 tap. A blind man walking, and he heard the Prophet ﷺ preaching, and so overjoyed, he's a Muslim, he's a new Muslim. He comes tapping quickly to the Prophet ﷺ, and he asks him questions. And this is now Al-Walid, and the blind man is not even a Qurashi, he's a servant, he's a Mawla, he doesn't have royal blood. And Al-Walid scoffs and sneers, these are your followers? Thanks, but no thanks. And he walks away. So the Prophet ﷺ had the bait, it was so close, he thought he literally caught him on the hook and gonna pull him in. And here comes Ibn Maktoum. And so he can't help but feel a little bit frustrated and a little bit hurt and exasperated. I was so close, you had to come now. And so he frowned and he turned away. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed from above the seven heavens, عَبَسَ وَتَوَلَّى أَنْ جَاءَهُ الْأَعْمَى وَمَا يُدْرِيكَ لَعَلَّهُ يَزَّكَّى أَوْ يَذَّكَّرُ فَتَنْفَعَهُ الذِّكْرَى أَمَّا مَنِ اسْتَغْنَى. As for the one who was arrogant and he thought he didn't needed you, فَأَنْتَ لَهُ تَصَدَّى. He was the one you were paying attention to. وَأَمَّا مَنْ جَاءَكَ يَسْعَى. As for the one who's coming running and rushing to you, and he wants to know, he wants to learn, that is the one you want to stay away from and you want to turn away from. No.
I got to pause it there because it's at the 14-minute mark. I also have a pizza that's about to be done, and I don't want to burn it because I'm hungry. Sorry. Okay. This is good. I like when I hear the something that blows my mind is somebody who can go from, I'm guessing, Arabic to English, and such a smooth transition. I can't. This is here's my best Spanish. Señor Burrito Taco Bell, por favor. There you go. Not quite sure what I said. Most of it was English, I think. I have no idea. My French is like, oh le revoir, poo poo. I don't even know what that just said. I'm going to teach a language course on this channel. Okay, with my self-defense course, if you've been reading the things in the description box. I teach you how to properly karate chop anything. Take the wings off of an airplane. Disassemble a tank with a well-placed karate chop. I don't know what's wrong with me. It just makes me laugh. Okay. There's a thanks button. You can donate to the channel. If you do, it's much appreciated. If you do donate, throw on some requests, and I'll get to them immediately. And like and subscribe. That helps tremendously. I'm almost at 1,100. And I appreciate every single one of you. And until next time, have a good day, have a good night.